Hey Wargamers, it's time for another army list review. Now, if you haven't seen this type of video from me before, basically I take a list that's sent to me by one of my supporters on Patreon. I talk about the things I think work well, the things that I think could use improvement, and then revise that list while trying to maintain the original kind of strategy and vision for the list while making those changes that I think make it just work a little bit better. So that's what we're doing here today, but this is a video that has been, well, I won't say frequently requested, but has been requested multiple times in the past. It is the video that may cost me all credibility as a channel, but you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. Today we are not reviewing a Tau army list. No, we are reviewing an Imperium list. We are reviewing an Ultramarines Primaris list. Now, as someone who does not play Marines, I play against Marines. This is going to be kind of a fun exercise for me personally, and hopefully entertaining for you, either in a good way or a bad way. We'll find out. But yeah, this is a shot at doing a list review for a Ultramarines list, and to the best of my ability. So, just keep that in mind. We are in Battlescribe as always. We'll talk about this original list, the things I like, the things I think could use improvement first, and then we'll go and do the revision later on. So, all right. So this is a 1,500 point list. As I said, it is Ultramarines. No, Gilliman is not in this list, and I think that's kind of part of the concept. So he will not be making an appearance today. So for HQ, we have a Librarian with a Force Stave. Yep, that's a good, a fine choice. He's going to give you lots of utility and, of course, some nice and useful smites as well. So a nice component there as well. And then you have a Primaris Captain and a Primaris Lieutenant. And we can joke about Primaris Lieutenants left and right. In fact, I'm really excited to see the new non-Primaris Lieutenants coming out from GW in the near future. But for these two guys together, they make a really good buddy cop team. The captain's going to allow you to re-roll ones to hit, and your lieutenant is going to allow you to re-roll ones to wound for friendly chapter guys within 6 inches. So together, they're actually improving your efficacy quite a lot, and they are going to be kind of the center point of your army. So having these guys surrounded by a bubble of Primaris is going to be the way to go. That's the idea of this list. For troops, we have an Intercessor squad with, 6 guys, 5 guys, of course, obviously. If you guys haven't noticed, I am battling some sort of bug, not a Tyranid bug, but something else. So, right, we have five Primaris here, 4 standard Intercessors, and then a Sergeant, which I think is actually really nice that, the Sergeant's just in there automatically. In Battlescribe, I'd love that if they brought that over for some other units as well. Like, Fire Warriors, that'd be cool if they did that. But yeah, bolt rifles, small, min squad of intercessors, another min squad of intercessors. Those are pretty standard choices. They're going to be able to do a fair amount of work for you. I think min squads are the way to go there, of course, as well. They're going to give you your flexibility and movement, but also, minimize splash over damage and stuff like that too. So, good choice there. The more controversial choice here in troops choices are going to be these tactical squads. So we have another 5-man unit with a Marine Sergeant, of course, and then a heavy weapon. This guy has a heavy bolter. Let's see, what does the next one have? Next one also has, this one has a plasma gun. These are choices that I think are a little bit weaker. In general, we see tactical squads going out of favor just because they really don't have a very clearly defined role. And I think that's true in this context as well, that really I'd rather use those points for something that's going to give me more tactical flexibility, like scouts, something that's going to allow me to, use their scoutiness to my advantage. Tactical squads over Primaris really don't give you much reason to take the tactical Marine anymore. So I'd shift away from them, either taking scouts or more intercessors, honestly. So I think those guys are probably going to be on the chopping block. For elites, we have an aggressor squad, min squad here as well. We're going to go with the pew pew version, not the flamer version. So these have the bolt storm gauntlets with grenade launchers on them. That's a pretty good choice. We're going for volume of fire with this list, and having your captain and lieutenant with you pairs nicely with these guys. I would maybe lean into these guys a little bit more. Having 3 either way isn't going to make a huge difference for you. They are a very valuable unit if you can keep them alive. And so having 3 guys on the table isn't necessarily going to facilitate that process. They're going to be relatively easy to remove from the board, and they'll be a target. So I might lean into them a little bit more and increase their numbers. We have a company ancient, and he has a banner. What does it say? I gotta recheck that. So he has this Star A's banner. So on a 4-up, a model gets to shoot or fight if he dies on a roll of a d6. So that's useful. That's going to give you a little bit more mileage out of every guy that you have. Then we have a Redemptor Dreadnought. Dreadnoughts, of course, are in a rough spot, right? I mean, if you can take out a Knight, if you can take out a Riptide, you can take out a Dreadnought pretty easily. And so, they're a good component of a list. I think he can really be a nice kind of distraction Carnifex for you at the very least. He's going to be your tank. He's going to, have to be dealt with by the opponent. And so he's going to be able to take some shots and also, do a fair amount of damage too with his weapon loadout. So a nice brawler here, a nice tank for you as well. So, I think that's a good inclusion to your list. Otherwise, we wouldn't really have anything with much durability. So having that Dreadnought is going to be important for that reason alone, and also to bring to bear some heavy firepower. So, he's good. Then we have a unit of Reavers, a 5-man unit of Reavers. Those guys are going to be an interesting complement here. I think the idea here, and then again down below, we have an assault squad. Between these two, I'm thinking the idea is to use them as a little bit of a pincer maneuver. So we're going to have our blob of guys. We're going to have our lieutenant, our captain, our librarian being surrounded by all of our shooty guys, all of our intercessors, tactical Marines in the current list, our aggressors, and then some units that we haven't talked about yet as well, including the Dreadnought. All those guys are going to be surrounding the 3 characters in the middle, kind of forming a little bit of a blob. And then you have these Reavers and this assault squad, and these guys are going to be putting forward pressure on your opponent, dictating their movement and forcing them to deal with either of these units before they can really deal with your more shooty and more valuable guys. So I think that's the idea here, is we're doing some sort of pincer maneuver and potentially some opportunity for opportunistic board grabs and objective grabbing and stuff like that too. But primarily these guys are going to be used to put forward pressure on, do some damage if they can, but really restrict the opponent movement. So between the Reavers and the Assault Squad, we have kind of a cool combo here. They'll work out nicely together. The Reavers, very deadly if they can get into combat. The Assault Squad can be as well, especially with this more advanced weapon loadout here. So we have, Sergeant, then we have a guy with the Eviscerator, a guy with the Flamer, 2 guys with Flamers. So, they can do a fair amount of damage just based on that. But between these 2 units, again, that's still only 10 guys, and they can be dealt with fairly easily. For heavy support, we have a unit of Devastators, which a great choice. This is going to benefit, again, very well in our little character blob at the center of the army. We have a guy with a Amorium Cherub, we have a Amorium Cherub, right? Then we have a las cannon, missile launcher and missile launcher. Cool. So these guys are going to do a lot of damage for you, right? We need those las cannons. That's the way to go. I would switch these guys maybe to las cannons if we could. I mean, having the missile launchers gives you some flexibility, but the las cannons are really going to be dealing the punches that you need to be dealt. You're dealing with kind of, you know, the list as it is currently has a lot of stuff to take care of, you know, lesser armored things. We don't have a lot of high power punch, and so having las cannons probably would be a little bit more advantageous here. Then we have another unit we have one unit of Hellblasters. Again, 5 guys. This kind of recurring theme is this MSU approach. I think for certain units that's going to be really useful, like, for example, the Intercessors. For some other units where we're trying to buff them and position them in a certain way, having larger squads, especially when they're going to be really valuable units, is going to be advantageous because it allows you to position them more easily and also keep them on the board a little bit longer, just in terms of just having more bodies, whether that's, you know, enough to fill up 2 separate MSUs or not, you know, is kind of you know, dependent on the number of points you have. But overall, I'd like to see, you know, more Devastators, more Hellblasters, more Intercessors or Scouts, and then more, what were we talking about here? Aggressors. I think, you know, more here would be a good, you know, the Assault Marines, I don't think are going to be pulling their weight. The Tactical Marines, I don't think are pulling their weight. The Reaver Squad by themselves are not going to do much, right? They need a buddy. They need somebody to take Overwatch for them. Whether that's another Reaver Squad or not, you know, if we're going to go for this kind of, you know, sucker punch approach with having the assault squads, we need to have something there to to play along with it, right? If you put out a single unit into assault, it's not going to happen. It's not going to do much for you. You need to put a lot of pressure on that effort. And that goes for army design in general or tactics in general, right? If I, as a Tau player, am facing an assault army or an army that has any type of assault component to it, and they put just that one unit right down in front of me, trying to charge something, trying to take advantage of a flank, anything like that, I'm not too worried about it because I know it's just one unit, and even if it gets into combat, I'll be able to take care of it the next time or something like that. You know, it's not one unit is going to be fairly easy to take care of. You need to have something that provides a lot of decision making for your opponent, and one unit doesn't do that. So that's a long way of saying if we're gonna do an assault unit, we need to have multiple. But I don't think that the Assault Marines are necessarily going to be pulling their weight there. All right, so overall, this list, you know, like I said, is pretty good for volume of fire, pretty good for taking out little guys, but we need a little bit more punchiness. We need a little bit more tactical flexibility too. I mean, if we're using the Assault Marines or the assault units to put pressure on the opponent, we still need something to get board control early on. That's what I will be trying to address in the revision. All right, so we have the same basic loadout as before. We're still Ultramarines. We're still focusing on shooting with our infantry units. But for HQ, we have a Librarian. Just as before, we have our Primaris Captain, and he's our Warlord. Now, I realized on the previous version we didn't have a Warlord trait assigned to this guy. Very important that we do that. So we have Storm of Fire on him here, considering our emphasis on infantry shooting and volume of fire. This is going to be a fantastic Warlord trait. It's essentially through Unity of Devastation, but for Specimens instead of Tau. So on a wound roll of 6 for guys within 6 inches, it increases their AP by 1. So that's going to be really nice given the number of, Primaris dudes that we have in here and how packed this bubble is going to be. That trait is going to trigger quite a lot. So very good. Then we have that Primaris Lieutenant, just as he was before. For troops, we have 2 intercessor squads. Each of these are going to be 5 guys, just as before. But then for the rest of the troop section, we have 2 units of scouts. Now, we could get away with a lower number of units here in troops, but overall, I thought having these 2 scout squad units would be really valuable in terms of positioning early on. We need something to kind of take up board space, turn 1, turn 2, and these guys are going to be that unit. As far as loadout goes, they are 7-man squads, and I gave 2 of them sniper rifles. Sniper rifles are a choice here that I don't think is completely necessary, but they do make these scout squads a little bit more annoying for your opponent. It forces them to take care of these scout squads and draws their attention towards these scout squads early on. Otherwise, those sniper rounds can add up and can make a pretty big difference, especially for some of those weaker characters you might face. So having those sniper rifles just make these guys a little bit more of a menace, a little bit more useful early on in the game, and make sure that your more important units stay on the table. So a little bit of a distraction unit here, but also being able to take up board space early on in the game and give you some sort of tactical flexibility, a little bit more control over your movement than you would have otherwise. For elites, I have 2 units of aggressors. This is more than we had before. We just had the 1 unit before, and they are 6-man units. Still with the Boltstorm Gauntlets, this is going to proc really nicely with that Storm of Fire trait. So tons of DACA coming out of these guys. They're going to want to stay close to those characters, though, in order to get the most bang for your buck. We have the Company Ancient as well. Him too, he's going to be part of your blob, right? Every time one of these aggressors falls, you're going to have a chance to have him unload another volley. And that's something that over the course of the game can really do some damage, right? You can really, hit some opportunity targets using that ability. Redemptor Dreadnought, he's the same as before. Again, a good tank, something to give you some durability and some punching power. Although not as necessary in this new list, I think, as he was before. Still a good component and just a really cool model. So he's safe. We have 2 Reaver squads. They are the same as they were before. They're 5-man squads. And these guys here are still filling that same role. They're still, popping in, putting some pressure on your opponent and forcing them to deal with these Reavers, or suffer the consequences. Now, the thing I will say about the decision to include these here, I kept them in because I felt that was a deliberate choice. In terms of the feel and style and tactics of the list, that there need to be some assault element in it. And I think Reavers are going to be a really cool way to do that. But I think overall, if we were trying to do a much more assault than this, we'd want to maybe look at something like Blood Angels or something like that. That's actually an opinion that was informed by conversations with a couple different actual Space Marine players too. I kind of kicked the thought around a little bit to see if I was crazy or not, and that's kind of where we landed. So let me know if I'm crazy though, guys. Seriously, put it in the comments. For heavy support, we leaned in heavy to Devastators. So I have 3 units of Devastators. They're all loaded up the same, more or less. This first squad here is all las cannons. And then the next 2 squads are just as they were before, with 2 las and 2 missile launchers. So I have 3 units like that. Devastators, aggressors, and then friends are basically this list. And then you have your buff characters in the middle. So we're going to have basically our blob of infantry that are just going to be putting out a ton of shots right off the bat. And this is going to all be really, really buffed by those central 3 or 4 characters. And then we'll have our scouts and our Reavers messing with guys both in the mid-end and forward field, dictating movement and being a distraction and grabbing objectives, things like that. So really, this is a strong gunline army. And I think it's equipped to deal with a diversity of targets. The biggest thing is going to be keeping your precious units alive. And I think we have enough chaff in here, enough distraction units to make that happen. But it really comes down to the opponent, right? I could see something like maybe something even like Dark Elder or Genestealer cults being pretty challenging for this to deal with. Orcs potentially too, things like that. This could probably have a hard time with, but I think, a little bit more, durable armies, I think this is going to have a pretty good time with, especially given the number of bodies that we're putting on the table here. I think you'll have a pretty good time with that. So it's more of these, specialized anti-infantry lists that I think this will struggle with. But overall, I think this list could do pretty well. I don't know. That's just my opinion. Like I said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What things do you like about this revision? What things would you change? How would you revise this list if you were standing here in front of the mic? Love to know. As always, thanks for watching and happy wargaming. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. This channel is made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoyed this video, consider joining our community over there and the associated Discord channel. Special thanks to Aaron Fox, Shifty, Jim Bob, Scott Heater, Nick Steele, Jared Egler, Tao Oswell, Zach Brooks, Stephen Cohen, Jake Johnson, Eric Jackson, Zealous Brimstone, Evan Wells, Benjamin, Julian Peck, Giovanni DiMaggio, and Chris Kessler.